Hello and welcome to the first ever Football Unravelled podcast. I'm joined by co-founder Brandon Faulkner. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good, Ross. Looking forward to getting into it.
Good stuff. And we're joined by our special guest today, Patrick Austin Hardy. Pat, how you doing?
How you doing, Russ? All fit and well. Well, yeah, not fit.
That's what we like to hear, Pat. That's what we like to hear, mate. So today's topic is the relegation battle in the Premier League. Seems quite fitting as it starts again tomorrow, and I'm sure we're all thankful for that. So yeah, kick back, have a beer or something stronger, depending on what time it is. But it's always 5 o'clock somewhere in the world, so kick back and enjoy. Probably makes sense to start with Norwich, doesn't it, Brendan?
Yep, start at the foot of the table. Yeah, Norwich are bottom of the league with only 21 points after 29 games, and they're 4 points behind Aston Villa, who are above them in 19th. So after a nice little, they started off the season quite well, inspired by Pookie's form with a run of early goals, sort of pushing them up the table. But since then, it has sort of went a little. The wheels have kind of fell off for Daniel Farke's team.
Yeah, and it doesn't look very rosy for them at the minute.
It's not very promising.
The super computer, if you can call it that, says they are 95% nailed on to go down. Pat, that's doesn't look very good for them right now, does it?
Well, supercomputers can be proved wrong sometimes, can't they? But no, you are right. When you look at the table, it is very grim viewing right now. I think 6 points off just 18th place. That doesn't even get safety, so it's not looking good. Brandon picked up upon Timu Puki's early form. 11 goals after 29 games does not sound too bad, especially for a striker playing for a club like Norwich. But when you consider 6 of those goals were within the first 5 games, and then he's only got 5 after that, as I said, is very grim viewing. One thing which is a hope for Norwich as well was that all these goals were right from the very start of the season. For the season has never ever happened before, not in the history of the Premier League as far as I'm aware. So if he's able to re-find that form he had in the beginning of the season, then Norwich will pick up points, but it remains to see.
And I think as well that you see with a lot of clubs towards their back end of the season, those that are in the relegation dogfight, as it were, they do finish strongly, I would say, i.e. West Brom last season. I know they didn't obviously stay up, but I think Darren Moore got manager of the month for them towards the back end of the season. They picked up some good results. So from a Daniel Farke side, I guess it would be surprising to see them go down without as much as a whimper. And I think if you look at their remaining games, they have Southampton, Everton, Arsenal, Brighton, Watford, West Ham, Chelsea, Burnley and Man City. And, they've already shown so far this season, I think, that they can pick up points against the big sides. And I think especially, the games sort of Brighton, Watford, Southampton, they will be looking to pick something up against them.
I think that's very right. You mentioned they've got Manchester City. Norwich took on Manchester City at Carrow Road in early September, and they played them off the park. They hit them with some pretty intense pressing, and City just could not handle it. The only thing with that kind of style of play, it is very, very hard to maintain over the course of the season. You need a lot of energy. You need a lot of players. You need players who are not only technically good, but who can physically last that. Now, they've had a 3-month break. They've had 3 months without any kind of football as well. They've had 3 months to prepare for this. If they're able to pick up those levels of physicality and fitness and carry on that high-pressing game, then, as I said earlier, I think they could get some wins. They could shock some people. They could even take on City, which, bear in mind, Manchester City, they have nothing to play for, pretty much, are like the biggest collapse from Liverpool. They're not going to win a league. They can't be in the Champions League next season, which actually I think everyone's kind of forgot about that they're not allowed in the Champions League as well. So it is possible for Norwich. It's going to be very, very hard, though. They need a lot of things to work with them as well.
Yeah, and I think when you said that the way they started the season so hot, and like if they could start it in the same sort of fashion this time after the restart, Southampton is a team that again can leak goals, so they can there's a place, potentially a win. Everton and Arsenal have both been quite hot and cold this season. So on the day, Norwich have proved that they can beat like Man City in a one-off game. If they can put it together in those two games and build up a bit of momentum, they then go on to play Brighton, Watford, and West Ham in a row. Three teams that are right down there in this dogfight at the bottom of the table. And if they can carry on that kind of run, even though the supercomputer says that it's very unlikely for them to stay up, it can absolutely give them as big a chance as they can possibly get, because out of the teams down around the bottom at the bottom six, Norwich get to play the most games against the remaining teams of the bottom six. So there's a chance to take points off teams that are down there with them.
I think as well, with obviously the games being played behind closed doors, it presents sort of a more of a level playing field, I guess, especially when you're away from home. I mean, Carrow Road's probably not the most intense in terms of atmosphere, but I guess it would help him, especially, you know, sort of in the games against Arsenal away from home, Chelsea away as well. And yeah, I just think it might level the playing field a little bit.
I think that's very right as well, although I think that will depend on what team you're talking about. I think a club like Norwich City, who do benefit from a crowd at Carrow Road, I mean, Carrow Road, it might not exactly be Sao Paulo, River Plate or anywhere like that, but there is a passionate following there, and players do react off that. You can only see that from the Manchester City game early in the season as well. However, other teams, I think, will benefit from playing behind closed doors. I think West Ham in particular, where let's face it, it's been a catastrophic season from them. The fans have paid an awful lot of money for a season ticket. Understandably, they're not happy. And if things go against them, it can become a very poisonous atmosphere, which will only weigh a player down. Take that crowd out, then perhaps there's a bit less pressure, and maybe a club like West Ham will actually do a lot better. But
Well,
it's going to be interesting.
you know me, I do love the supercomputer predicting stuff, and they say they've only got a 20% chance of relegation. I'm not sure what factors has actually gone into that, but if you look at their next, or the last fixtures, I should say, Wolves at home, it's a toughie. Then Spurs, local derby, obviously. Form, I know obviously they haven't played in three months, but the form and stuff like that goes out the window in derby games. Then they've got Chelsea, so there's 3 tough games to start with. And then even after that, they got a trip up to Newcastle, which they might be helped by it being behind closed doors. Obviously the Geordies quite passionate up there. And then they got Burnley and Norwich, 2 games where Burnley would be tough, but they'd be hopeful they could get 3 points. I think for a side like West Ham, who's invested quite a lot of money into not just players but the infrastructure as well, with the London Stadium, that they would be looking to beat sides like Burnley. No disrespect to them. And then they're followed by obviously Watford again, right down there. So, and then they got Man United and then Villa as well. So they got 4 games in there where you could argue that they have to win them.
Yeah, I think as Pat said, with the I think almost with it being behind closed doors, it almost lifts a bit of pressure off the West Ham players, because if you look at those early home games, some of the restart, they play Wolves and Chelsea and Burnley, those first 3 home games, those first 5 games, if the results don't necessarily go their way, that fans could be right on top of them, and that can have as negative effect as a goal, pretty much. So if you take that element out of it, there's maybe they might play with a bit of a weight off their shoulders that could potentially, they're not right down in there in the battle, but they certainly have to look over their shoulder. But they do have winnable games in there, as you said. Like in the last 4 games, they get to play Norwich, Watford, and Villa. So there's 3 teams right around them that definitely, it could be the final nail in the coffin for me, for the likes of Norwich and Villa when they play them.
There are many points in there. I think this break is actually, sometimes, they say this break could actually be very good for most teams. I think West Ham will probably benefit more than most, not just in a relegation battle, out of all 20. 1 win in 8 games before the Corona struck. And as I said, there was some poisonous atmospheres building down at the new London Stadium. And this is a new slate for them now. And they do have a lot of quality in their team. Sebastian Haller, if he finds his form, he could definitely power West Ham out. I believe Jack Wilshere will be fit, which when he's at his best, he is a very, very good player as well. David Moyes has had another 3 months to work with them, maybe not necessarily on a training pitch every day, but he's been able to work with them. And I'm sure all their analysts would have kept all the players very busy. So I personally think West Ham will evade relegation. I think there's a lot of quality in that team, and I think take the burden off the horrible atmosphere at the London Stadium and the pressure. I think they will get points, and plus Wolves, Spurs, and Chelsea. Okay, that's very tough, but you want to play those games straight as the season restarts because you don't know what they're going to be like. They could be perhaps a lot weaker. And I also think the games are going to be very, very scrappy as well. There's going to be a lot of rust. I think there's going to be a lot of set piece goals, a lot of goal line scrambles. We all love a goal line scramble. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot of goals coming into the game. And I think West Ham, they've got a lot of height, a lot of strength. I can see them getting some wins during this period. And it wouldn't surprise me if they claim some scalps in their opening 4 games.
No, definitely not. I think, obviously, it seems that with West Ham, it's a bit hot and cold so far this season. You know, they've shown that in some games they can score a lot of goals, and then in other games they can't hit a barn door. And it's sort of proved in the expected goals per 90. They actually have a lower ratio than Watford, Brighton, and Norwich. So it's quite clear to see where. And Pat, you picked up on it. I think Sebastian Haller, if he finds his feet, he can, lead them to safety. I think that's the guy that you've got to be sort of, as a West Ham fan, you've got to be hoping he's firing when he comes back from the break.
Indeed. Another thing as well, which I've just picked up on, was in those, as I said, 1 win in 8 games. They have changed formations an awful lot in those 8 games. They've gone 4-2-3-1, 3-4-2-1, 4-4-1-1, 5-3-2, 4-1-4-1. That kind of inconsistency, it just creates confusion.
I do think, however, though, is that it's not a bad thing to tweet, but I think you do find that one thing that I can pick up from analysing their games is that the midfield pivot is always Mark Noble and Declan Rice. And as a side, you like to have that anchor in there, regardless of if you change the teams. It's good to have a core, a spine almost. And then you've obviously got your players like Felipe Anderson, Lanzini as well. I know he was laid off for a while, but coming into that. So if everyone can mould together, I think they've got definitely a good enough side to survive the drop. But I mean, I think as West Ham have to be very, very wary. Too many times I've heard it said that they're too big to go down. Newcastle a few years ago were too good to go down and too big to go down.
I think if you look at the fact that you said that how good a spine, they have good enough players in there in the spine of the team. If you look at this, like Pat said, the break came at a perfect time for them. It's gave them effectively a pre-season to give them as good an opportunity to find a system that works for them. And there's good enough players in there for them to go and win a good few games of the remaining fixtures, which, as you said, that they've been the cliche of that they're too good to go down. But I'd like to think with the time that they've had to work on stuff over the break that they have enough about them to keep themselves up.
I think as well, you look at the goals against West Ham, and it's only 2 less than Norwich. They've conceded 50 goals already this season, so you can see where the problem lies. At an average of 1.72 goals conceded a game, and once you have a ratio like that, you'll struggle to win games, especially if your centre forward's not striking on all cylinders, so to speak. But having said that, though, I think if you do look at the squad overall, it's probably a mid-table side, I would say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. They shouldn't have found themselves down in this position with the players available and the amount of money that they've spent on players over the last couple of seasons. I know money doesn't necessarily buy you success, but if you're a mid-table Premier League team and spending the amount of money that West Ham have, you should at least be sort of consolidated in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also as well that they are obviously a good side, a mid-table side, as we said, that can look to push on. They've got some players that will drag them through. Obviously, Felipe Anderson is the go-to. So I think they'll be fine, but you just never know with West Ham, and especially looking at the fixtures, they're tough games. If the right West Ham side turn up,
Yeah.
I think they'll get points. But again, the Premier League, anyone could beat anyone in this league. I think that's been proved this season, last season as well. So they're definitely not out of it, and they need to definitely hit the ground running. If they can win against Wolves, that'll set them up right, and I think give them a bit of confidence.
Felipe Anderson will probably be the most important player for this period as well. Another player who can get a lot of stick from the West Ham fans. Lots of people have questioned his work rate and commitment, and he's quite often hauled off very early by Dave Moyes as well. But he was a £40 million plus player. Not many players go for that amount of money, and he obviously has the talent, and he's shown it in glimpses, especially against teams like Manchester United and Chelsea as well. And if he can get his form back, I think West Ham will comfortably avoid the drop. But he needs to show his form right now. We can't wait. He's been here for nearly 2 seasons now. He needs to find that magic.
And you never know; they could be set up for a final day finale against Aston Villa. Could be loser goes down. You never know.
Yeah.
And well, speaking of Villa,
it's a perfect segue into back
Aston
down to the
Villa.
foot of the table.
70% chance of relegation. Discuss.
Yeah, I think it can be. It is a bit. I wouldn't say it's not quite as bad a scenario as Norwich, but it's not an awful lot better. They only got 4 points more, and they're 2 points from safety. And they also have a game in hand, which is the one thing that they have on their side. But they only get to play against one team in the bottom six for the remainder of the season, and like we just said, against West Ham on the last day, which the damage could be done by then because they have to play Sheffield United off the restart, the first game tomorrow night that is, and then they have Chelsea, which is as tough a run of fixtures as you're going to see from these relegation threatened teams. And one of the big issues that they've had is they've not necessarily been that short on goals, but they don't have as out and out a goal scorer as like Norwich would with Timu Pukki, or West Ham with Haller, or like Bournemouth down there with Callum Wilson. They're sort of relying on their goals to come from elsewhere because Jack Grealish is their top scorer with only 7 goals, which there's a bit of a burden on him to also be the creator as well as the main talisman in terms of goals.
He picked up on that point of Grealish being a sort of a creative player. I think it's probably too much of a burden to put on one player, and I think it's actually fabricated into the expected goals per 90. They've got the worst out of the bottom 6, 1.11 per game per 90, which doesn't equate to something too good.
Yeah, it's not really success, and they have problems at the other end of the field as well. So, like, as you said, they're not expected goals is pretty poor reading, but also in terms of defensively, they've conceded 56 goals, which is the most in the league. Two goals a game, and they've had 10 errors that have led to goals, which is definitely been punished. The table shows that they've been punished for that, because if they conceded 10 less goals, they may not have been in as bad a scenario as they are now. They might have, I'm not necessarily saying they would have been high flying in mid-table or maybe pushing up there with other newly promoted teams like Sheffield United, but it could have lifted a bit of a weight and maybe had them with their fate in their own hands rather than having to rely on some results to go their way in these last 10 games.
I think that Wesley, obviously, it's a similar situation to Haller, I guess. That he needs to be firing when he comes back, and I think he's probably got some stick that's probably unwarranted. I think it's come from the players around him as well. Obviously, they haven't, or their expected goals per 90 is obviously the lowest in the league. But I think as well, maybe they lost John McGinn, didn't they, as well?
Yeah, he was injured for quite a period of time. And also, I think a lot of the players they've signed as well aren't. They signed them when they were in the Championship, and they don't have much Premier League experience about them. So the likes of Wesley, he was playing in Belgium before he signed for Villa. So it's quite a change of scenery to come from Belgium, where maybe not there's clearly not the same sort of level as opposition. You're not going to be playing Man Cities and Liverpools at any stage when you're in Belgium, but coming in and being sort of thrown into the deep end with a newly promoted team, probably not as much service, and like as you said, expected goals shows that they're not creating chances that lend themselves to him being able to go and score, maybe getting to double figures.
Yeah, I think the most stats I've seen. I mean, I might have to double check the stat, but I believe Aston Villa have conceded the most amount of set pieces, which is a huge surprise considering John Terry is an assistant coach, but maybe the defence isn't good enough. Who knows? But as I picked up earlier on, everyone's going to be rusty. There's no teams really had a proper pre-season. Goals are going to be coming from set pieces everywhere, and if Aston Villa have conceded the most set pieces, it doesn't seem like there's many more positive signs that are coming back. But as I said, like West Ham, this break has come at a perfect time. They lost 5 consecutive games. Okay, fair enough. 2 of those were against Manchester City and Leicester. But 5 consecutive losses, that is not good in the Premier League, really. And if there was no break in the coronavirus, I think that they were probably on their way down, to be honest.
Yeah.
Who knows? The extra time really could do things. Maybe they've sorted that set piece problem. We won't know until the ball gets rolling again tomorrow.
Tomorrow's a massive game, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge game for the comeback. It's the break as well has been a good opportunity to get John McGinn back from injury and give him a chance to sort of get some, not necessarily minutes in his legs, but get running again, get fit, and be at a level where you can at least get some game time out of him, because he's obviously such a key player. So if you look at the who scored ratings for the Villa team, Jack Grealish is the top player on their team, but John McGinn's not a million miles behind. So Grealish has a 7.3 rating for the season, and McGinn's just behind on a 7.2. So he's really not too far off, but he's the kind of player you're not going to see great output from. You're not going to see goals and assists on his. He's there to pick up the ball and try and nullify sort of the attack and threat from other teams, and maybe and give a bit of a box-to-box presence where he will nick a goal every now and then, but you're not expecting him to sort of carry the weight for the team.
I think as well, I've probably had a growing affection for Villa this season. I think what's really refreshing to see with both Aston Villa and Norwich is that they're giving their managers time to try and turn it around. And I think obviously Dean Smith's I'm right in saying he's a Villa fan, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I like him as a manager. He's obviously got them out of the Championship when, to be fair, they were struggling, weren't they? Before he came.
He took them over to that position. I think they were 16th when he took over. So he's managed to flip that on its head and get them in the Premier League, which probably wasn't the expectation for them at the time.
And look, with I think Daniel Farke as well, with both of them, it's their first experience of Premier League, isn't it? And I think it's sort of, with both of them, it's sort of a polar opposite to sort of the Fulham situation from last season. I'm a massive fan of Slavisa Jokanovic, and I think Fulham got rid of him definitely too soon.
Yeah, he was gone well before Christmas,
and it shows that changing a manager doesn't always necessarily make a big difference. And I think it's really refreshing to see 2 newish managers to the Premier League get given that chance. And obviously they're both men with plans. They've got their clubs out of the second division before. So should they both go down, I think, that they would have that plan back in place to get back up. And they're 2 very well-run clubs as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Especially Norwich, with the net spend and things like that.
And they also have an absolute conveyor belt of young players coming through, like Aarons and Cantwell. And I'm sure there's many more in the pipeline ready just to step in.
Yeah, absolutely. I have next on my list Bournemouth.
Yeah, moving from inexperienced Premier League managers to one who's been here quite a while now.
Yeah, has he got the key to the city yet, do you know?
I don't know after this season. I don't think that might be on the table.
They got a really, really tough run.
Yeah, yeah, they're the only team in the bottom six that don't get to play one of the other bottom six teams, and they've got, yeah, as you said, quite a horrible run in. They've got to play Palace, they've got Wolves, Newcastle, Man United, Spurs, Leicester, Man City, and then Southampton, then Everton on the final day. So that is that middle sort of chunk of fixtures where they play Man United, Spurs, Leicester, Man City is, I think it's just going to be a case of them keeping some sort of morale up in those, because if they can't pick up the wins in those first ones, I don't think they're going to be able to find much luck in that middle section.
I can't really see more than 7 points from that run of games, if I'm being honest.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't see.
Yeah,
seven's generous.
I'm going to disagree actually, because the last when Bournemouth first got promoted, Eddie Howe and the club, they had a real problem with starting seasons. They would lose. They were almost starting off with 4 defeats pretty much every season, and they clawed it back and then managed to punch above their weight, and then they got into mid-table. The last 2 seasons, they've started fairly strongly, to be fair. They did not start like a team that would be destined for relegation. I think Bournemouth have been very, very unlucky in terms of injuries as well. They've lost a lot of key players. And I think recently as well, the form of some of the stronger players, the likes of Ryan Fraser, I think maybe the early transfer speculation when their clubs like Chelsea were linked with him in January, I think that maybe threw his focus a tiny bit. I think Nathan Ake has perhaps lost a bit of form as well. But then again, they're going to be fighting for their places right now, fighting for the club's future. A club like Bournemouth, as small as it is, if they go down, it could be very hard.
Yeah.
It could be.
It's happened to a lot bigger clubs. It's happened to Sunderland and Portsmouth in recent times.
Southampton as well.
Southampton, yeah. Another Leeds have been right down there as well. So far bigger clubs in Bournemouth have suffered quite a struggle after getting relegated from the Premier League. So
I think
to look at their
with Bournemouth is the recruitment. I think has been a little bit wayward. But a little bit wayward. I think it has been wayward.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's sort of stagnated a bit.
Yeah, they obviously bought players for good prices. I think even I don't know how much Ake went to them. It was 25 million, but I still think that's a steal. I think they'll make at least 40 million off of him.
Yeah.
But like Jordan Ibe, he was 25 as well, wasn't he? And he's leaving them this summer.
Dominic Solanke as well, went for big money, and has not had any sort of. He hasn't fulfilled the promise whatsoever.
Yeah, I think they've been very unfortunate in terms of transfers. I think if you looked at the time when they signed Jordan Ibe and perhaps Dominic Solanke, I think at the time we all said that actually, they're good street signings, like young players, good form in England under 21s, but obviously it's just not happened. I think Dominic Solanke really needs to find some form if he's going to have a future in the Premier League at all, let alone at Bournemouth. However, with Harry Wilson's going to be coming back soon. He was very, very impressive for Bournemouth early on the season. And as I was saying earlier, not only would it come down to scrappy goals, I think it's going to come to individuals a lot as well. Of the likes of Jack Grealish. I think Harry Wilson is a very key player. Ryan Fraser. If they get them both on form and getting it into Josh King, who, bear in mind, was one of the top goal scorers not too long ago, I think they could stay up as well. But as you said, they've got some, especially the last 5 games, Spurs, Leicester, Manchester City, they're going to have to hope that those teams don't have anything to play for. And maybe the top 4 has been decided, or the league's been decided. Well, the league probably will be decided.
So, Pat, are you saying that they're going to stay up?
It's quite tricky. I think pretty much every team we've talked about, I said they're going to stay up. So
someone has to go down.
I'm going to play my
for the end.
I'm going to play my trump card here. Do you want to know what the supercomputer predicts?
What?
Not really. But
I'd say going down.
63.4% of chance of relegation.
That's quite high. I think if you look at it, it's quite high. But if at any stage of the season now is the sort of the chance where they have the best. With obviously that run of fixtures is very tough, but now is their best chance to do well because they now have a lot of players fit that weren't fit before. So if you look at Callum Wilson's been in and out of the team with injuries, and he's still their top scorer with 8 goals. Harry Wilson's been injured at stages of the season. He's their second top scorer. And also David Brooks is almost a forgotten man because he's missed the majority of the season through injury, and he was lighting it up for them last season. And that with all those players back, it puts him in the best possible position to put a fight up against relegation.
On
But it's going to
paper,
be
I think
extremely tough.
on paper, you look at the side and you probably don't think they warrant that 18th place if you just look on paper. But unfortunately, football's not played on paper, is it? And the expected goals per 90 for them really surprised me, 1.12, which is, you think about, they got 2 centre forwards that can put the ball in the back of the net. They got 2 wide players that are very good, in my opinion. Ryan Fraser's obviously attracting a lot of attention. But again, like most of the sides down at the bottom, they do leak goals. And they concede on average 1.62 a game. And I don't know, I just think sometimes statistics can be a bit of a buzzkill because with those players, you would expect, you could sort of expect 2 goals a game from Bournemouth, I would say.
You expect goals from that side. If you look, as you said, the front 4 is just, there is goals in that team. If you look even just back the last season, that if you probably compared it now, I don't know the stats, but I'd assume they were far better off. They're obviously in a better league position, but those players would have had a lot more goals. Josh King, I can't remember whether he's been injured or not, but I'd say even if so, he'd probably be still quite underwhelmed with only 4 goals this season after how good a campaign he had last year.
I think he has had injuries, although I know Supercomputer says lots of different. I think Eddie Howe's a very good manager, and I think pretty much every single season they've been in the Premier League.
You know him better than most, Pat, don't you? You know him better than what me and Brandon do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember my times covering the Eddie Howe press conferences, and actually in the press conferences, he's very eloquent in his words. He knows what he's talking about, and I think that reflects in his managing methods as well and his coaching methods. He's managed to get Bournemouth all the way from League 2 to the Premier League. You could almost say he's the real life football manager gamer, isn't he? Except he's living it in the real days. And I think when you have Eddie Howe as manager, I think a club always has a chance. And I think he could keep Bournemouth up. Well, as I said, I think I've pretty much said every team we've covered. I think I've said it's up to somebody's.
That's the trouble with the Premier League. There's enough. Every team that is warrants being there. It's just who's the worst out of a very good bunch of teams.
Now,
yeah,
I hope Nigel Pearson doesn't bury his head in the sand.
Yeah,
like an ostrich. And if he keeps that Watford side up, which I think he would do, I would absolutely love for him to be playing an Elton John song at Vicarage Road. Once he's kept them up. You just imagine Nigel Pearson being Rocket Man.
Yeah.
While still standing above the relegation.
Yeah. Pat, don't go breaking my heart like that. But
anyway, before
I think that's the best thing we've said so far this podcast.
Yeah, before I throw myself out the window.
Before Brandon moves into a horrible pile of Northern Ireland, I think maybe back down to Watford. Watford are a strange. They were pretty much destined for the drop, and then they suddenly went into Liverpool 3-0 and watched a pretty incredible spell. Nigel Pearson is.
He loves the Great Escape. It's always on the cards.
I look at this Watford side, and I talk about having a core and a spine, but they really do. They got Ben Foster, who's still a great goalkeeper in my opinion. Craig Cathcart at the back is solid. Solid. You know what you're going to get with him. The core is I think he's a very, very good underrated player. And then you've got Deeney up top, who might not get you all the goals, but you know what you're going to get from him. You know he's going to sweat blood for the cause and stuff like that, and he'll have something to say in Watford staying up, in my opinion.
The only thing with Watford is, sorry, Brandon, when you look at their form, quite often they're not their consistency is very odd. They blow very, very hot and cold. I think when you look at between December, they managed to beat like someone like Man United 2-0, and then they went unbeaten 6 games, winning 4 of those. And then after that, they went 5 games without a single win, losing 3 of them. And they are the kind of club who could win 7, 8 games in a row, but then lose 8 games in a row as well. And with 9 games left of the season, and a club which only blows hot or cold, there's no in between.
Yeah.
They could potentially get into the top 10, sink right down to the bottom. It's going to be interesting. I can't see an idea. They're playing against Leicester, and if Leicester deal them a heavy defeat, maybe perhaps a 4 or 5-0, which is possible with Watford 8-0 to City, then
Could be curtains for them, couldn't it?
they could fall into a rut of confidence, and once you fall down that, it's very, very tough to get
I think
out.
as well, for all the players that I just said, I think Delafeu, Pereira are both confidence players as well.
About to say. If you look at players as well, like Sarr as well, they brought in for quite big money, and he was recently starting to find his feet. He got the goals against Liverpool, and he was starting to look like a real threat just before the break. And with the players like that, if you have a player like Deeney who's in there, who's the ideal sort of facilitator for those kind of tricky wingers, he's sort of like a sort of a hard Brexit Giroud. He's able to come in there, hold the ball up, and then like release the likes of Delafeu and Sarr, who can run on and are very capable goal scorers.
As if I should just put a disclaimer in there that this isn't a political podcast and we don't associate with anyone. Just to throw a disclaimer in there, but I know what you mean, and I think, as I said, he's someone that wears his heart on his sleeve. I think.
Absolutely, but that's also in life as well. I think we've remarked over the last couple of months, Troy Deeney is extremely uncomfortable. He's been very vocal about this. He's very uncomfortable about finishing the season due to perhaps catching the coronavirus as well. So there's no guarantee he will play.
It's understandable, isn't it, as well, though?
Yeah.
I think.
Especially this situation with his kid having breathing difficulties from birth. He obviously doesn't want to be bringing that kind of thing home, especially when even though there's such a small percentage of the tests in the Premier League coming back positive, it's still a threat. And it's nothing he wants to risk.
Do we know if he is, because he was back at training, wasn't he? He did go back to training, so
he's been back. So yeah. I'm assuming he's ready to roll the sleeves up and try and keep them up.
I think as well though that the screening protocols are good, but they are good, yeah. But you could have the virus and not know for it doesn't show for a few days, does it? So there's that as well. But it's completely understandable. With this.
Well, the thing is, you can get tested for coronavirus. You can leave the testing centre and then pick it up straight away. That's another thing. And one thing which I'm really looking forward to see, especially with footballers as well, the coronavirus, that is going to be in your back of your mind, full stop. You cannot socially distance in football either.
No.
Right, you can't social distance. When you're man-to-man marking or playing on the left shoulder, you're not going to be able to be 2 meters away from each other. And is that something which could hang in the back of footballers'
mind? I don't know though. Have you ever seen Wesley Hooter at a corner? Social distancing.
He's been practicing social distancing for years.
As you can tell, I'm a disgruntled Southampton fan. But it's okay. We're out of it. We're 14th. We're going to have some sexy Austrian football for the rest of the season. We don't have to worry about relegation. So that's nice for a change. But yeah, no, I think, Pat, do you want to know what the supercomputer says for Watford?
Can I guess what the supercomputer?
If you guess, we'll have you on again.
So I'm going to say a 54% chance of relegation.
You're way off.
I've got to say 18.
You're way off as well. It's somewhere in the middle of that.
Middle.
32. 32.3, so round it down 32.
Yeah,
so.
I'm rounding it up. I got it right.
They're in 17th place, though. Have they worked that?
They are, but...
Yeah, but I think the supercomputer's already buried Norwich. Villa's more or less there, and I think Bournemouth's fixtures has certainly put them right down in the estimates with our supercomputer.
Nigel Pearson's a good manager as well.
Yeah.
I must
they don't have the worst fixtures either.
I must admit, I have to go out on a limb here. I'm not sure how super these supercomputers are. These are the same computers which said England were the third best country, only a couple months after we did not make it out of the group stages of the World Cup. So this is the same technology which measures that. And I don't think that supercomputer should really be read too much into.
Well, that leaves us with, if that's the sort of errors that we can see, that leaves us with a very exciting last 9 games. If the supercomputer can be that wrong.
I'm going to go out on a limb here as well, and I'm going to say Watford won't go down because I've never seen them get relegated from the Prem in my Football Manager saves.
Yeah, I've seen many different things with Football Manager saves. Leicester have been to League One and mine and back, so I wouldn't look into Football Manager a great deal either.
With Rust, that's probably because you're deleting the season before you do get relegated.
That's very true. No, I'm not Sam Allardyce, mate. I've never been relegated myself, so you know. But anyway,
one more team to look at.
I believe it's Brighton and Hove Albion.
Yes, 15th place Brighton.
This is interesting because in my notes here, I have goals against. They've only conceded 40, and they're the lowest out of the bottom teams. On average, conceding 1.37 goals a game, and I have jotted underneath that Lewis Dunk effect.
Yeah,
he's going to be crucial, isn't he?
Yeah. I've noticed that. I've looked at the goal scorers and I've looked at goal scorers, assists, and top performers, and Lewis Dunk, believe it or not, is second in terms of assists for Brighton, which shows how effective he can be up at both ends of the pitch. He's their second. He's their second highest rated performer this year from who scored. He's got 6.9 rating. Brighton's ratings haven't been overly high. No player managed to break the 7 barrier, but it sort of shows that they've had a bit of a down season, I'd say, because if you look at it, they've sacked Chris Hughton in the hunt for more attractive football that was, in theory, going to take them up the league a bit. But if you look at their stats and the players that have been so key for them, if you didn't realise who the manager was, you would easily fall into thinking it's Chris Hughton.
That's the thing. Clubs sometimes have to be careful what they wish for. They actually registered a single Premier League victory in 2020 as well, which surprises me. I think Graham Potter, I think he's done quite well, to be fair, with the resources. Well, he doesn't exactly have a war chest. He didn't have the money Aston Villa had to spend, for instance. They can grab a result out of now. They proved that against Chelsea with Yakash's overhead. They beat Arsenal 2-1 at the Emirates as well. Beat Spurs 3-0 at home as well. So they're definitely capable of getting results. Obviously, breaks come at a good time for them as well. Like 9 games without a win, not a single Premier League victory in 2020 as well. So it was not looking good for them. First 4 games of the season are iffy.
I think the one thing you have to look at, as we were speaking just before we started, was Brighton probably have the hardest run of fixtures.
And that's interesting as well because they've been given the best chance of survival out of the teams that we're talking about. And they're not a million miles off points-wise, the bottom 3.
But I think if you're looking at it, having points on the board, they have those 2 extra points over 18th place Bournemouth, which, if you look at it, Bournemouth's fixtures are also very hard. Brighton's would be harder, but you've got to look at Brighton have more points as it stands. And they also get to play Norwich, which is potentially, if a win in that game could be enough to maybe...
It's a tough run though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Arsenal at home.
Absolutely brutal.
You've got Arsenal at home, Leicester away, Man United at home, Norwich away, Liverpool at home, Man City at home. That's a back-to-back fixtures you want, innit? You're buzzing. Southampton away, Newcastle at home, and then Burnley away. So it could go... It could go either way in a couple of those games.
The winless streak could easily continue the whole way to the end of the season with that.
Yeah, it's very tough. I mean, those first 4 games, Arsenal home, Leicester away, Man U home, Norwich away, is going to be very tough. However, Arsenal lost to, I believe it was Brentford the other day at home. Okay, it's a friendly, but still it's one of the only pre-season games they'll get to play. Leicester, even though they did win on their last game 4-0, I do think their form was slightly declining, almost like they're running out of steam slowly. So it depends how they're going to be. Man United, I think Man United will perhaps be the most dangerous team in the Premier League with Bruno and Pogba playing together in midfield.
Yeah.
But the good thing is they are facing these teams early, which is the thing. It's better to face them now than in the last 4 games. And if they can maybe conjure up some points, then you're playing Liverpool and Manchester City, who will probably have nothing to play for. I imagine Liverpool will have clinched the league title by then, so he could play. He wouldn't want to. Liverpool had a very long and hard year playing in the Club Cup and everything like that as well, so he will not want to play all the first teams. City could just be, again, just in that they might not have too much motivation. As I said, nothing more to play for.
No, European football definitely gives Brighton a hope in that game because, as you said, the league should be wrapped up by that point, and City are in that sort of awkward no man's land where, regardless of how well they do, there's not really anything to play for. They could lose every game, and it'll still mean as much for the season as it would if they were to win every game.
Exactly.
Right.
And Southampton, Newcastle, Burnley. That's 3 quite nice games to play in the last games, considering what it could be. So
yeah, there could be a point. There's points in there. It's just whether they can flip the form round from what it was pre-coronavirus break.
But Graham Potter, I like him. I think he's a good manager.
Yeah, I think it's a tough job to come in. Going into any club and changing the culture is always going to be quite a task. And
it's a project, isn't it? At the end of the day,
I think the fact that he's been able to go in and do it without completely, like, he's succeeded to a point, but he's also failed to a point where they're still down there in threat of relegation. But if you look at how he's brought the team on and changed the style, it's got to go down to success if they do enough to stay up.
Exactly, that's what I was just about to say. 17th place and above is, they're going to take, and I think that they will be a lot stronger for this season, having a season under Graham Potter. Probably something that the playing style that wasn't accustomed to under Chris Hughton. It was very sort of disciplined, very very rigid, I'd say, quite direct as well. And then obviously Graham Potter's come in, he 3 at the back. That's the obvious change. He wants to press high up the pitch, which Chris Hughton was a little bit more standoff. And I just think you do need time to adapt to that. And I'm not making comparisons with Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp or anything like that. But what I will say is that took time, and you can see sort of similarities in the way that they want to press and things like that.
And so I think if they've been able to find a player, so like with Neil Maupay up top, I think that's the sort of, for quite good value. I think he was only 12 million for a player who's the classic phrase, a goal scorer is a goal scorer. He was able to bang them in the Championship on a regular basis, and he's been able to translate that to an extent to the Premier League. Obviously, his first season there's a bit of acclimatising to do, but he's managed to get 8 goals, and in a team that is, as you said, quite defensively solid in terms of a team down around the bottom. 8 goals can be enough to sort of get you through when your team's not conceding. They're not shipping goals like Villa or Norwich or West Ham. So I think that the change of style is also, like, they've kept elements of Chris Hughton's there, because they obviously all the defenders. They've got like Lewis Dunk and that have obviously played under Chris Hughton for a few years beforehand, and Duffy as well. So they've they're defenders who know how to defend for a start. Not like trying to find. They're not going out there and cherry picking centre backs who are going to be really good on the ball and like almost like a midfielder. They've got defenders who know their role as to keep the ball out of their goal first, and then second they can go on and play more expansive football.
And I think as well, you say that we're going really analytical now. But with the change to the 3 at the back, it gives more passing options when you're playing out from the back, which I think definitely helps Shane Duffy, Lewis Dunk. And
if you almost look at it like
they're Premier League footballers, they're not bad on the ball, but they're not an Otamendi or someone like that, So I think in that respect, I think you've got to give credit to Graham Potter to keep 2 very good defenders in, but moulding his style to be able to have them, because let's face it, they are probably 2 of the key players, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you look as well that he brought in Dan Burn, who's went on to be their highest scored player in terms of average rating, and just ahead of Lewis Dunk and then Davy Proper. But to bring in a player like that who can step straight in with a new manager and sort of help ease the transition into that formation. So then you have three solid centre backs that they know they can rely on, and then that's a good solid base for them to be able to go and then the rest of the players to press and to engage higher up the pitch.
The XG per 90 looks good for them as well. They are joint highest with Watford, 1.18, and if you compare that to how the goals against, I think on paper it looks quite positive. But again, the fixture list is very
Again, yeah,
it's very it's not the easiest
unforgiving.
to say. Yeah,
If they don't pick up a point early on, it could be a long 9 games. But that, as I said, they have that cushion where they have the 2 points gap, and a lot of the teams down around there do have quite a strong set of fixtures to contend with.
I think I'd like Brighton to stay up. It's they're very much part of the charm of football. You know, they're not a massive club, and they're probably overachieving in some respects.
Yeah.
I don't think it's harsh to say that.
It's not. Yeah, as I said, they're
that.
the kind of team that people can get behind. It's not.
Yeah.
They're not a team that is going to divide people. They have their rivalry with Palace. That's not really a rivalry. They're not that close.
Strange one, isn't it? Strange one. They're just a likeable club. They're the type of team that your granddad would support. Do you know what I mean? I don't, and I get really annoyed when people say it's a derby with Southampton. I don't see it as a derby. I think they're a likeable club. You know, they're punching above the weight, and good luck to them. Really,
it's nice to see.
Well, you said they were in Sorry to interrupt, but you said they were in transition, and you said you need time to go through these transitions. That's very true. However, there is no time. There's 9 games left, and they've got
true.
Straight away.
Especially with those 9 games.
Exactly with those 9 games as well. Then perhaps maybe you forget about the expensive football for now. I think that was quite a dangerous decision, actually, sacking. Because, as I said, be careful what you wish for. And unfortunately, they have 9 games where they're facing Arsenal, Leicester, Man U, Liverpool, and Manchester City, and lots of other tricky games as well.
I think if you look at it, it's high risk, high reward, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say that
if they stay up,
you can only judge it. You can only judge it at the end of the season. If they stay up, it's a success. If they get relegated, it's been a failure.
If they stay up, they'll be a lot better for the experience.
Very true. Well, although you could look at Huddersfield, they tried the expensive game with. His name's just suddenly left my head.
David Wagner.
David Wagner, yeah.
David Wagner, that was it. They tried that, and unfortunately, they are now in the depths of the Championship. They're going to get promoted anytime soon as well. So maybe Premier League. You need results to stay up more than any league. Expensive football. It's great. It's like Norwich are very entertaining. I love watching them on the game, but I'm sure their supporters don't like seeing them. Goals, preventable goals also. So, and that's the thing. If you want expensive football and you want to risk your Premier League position, then yeah, that's fine. But it's kind of having your cake and eating it at the same time, isn't it? And unfortunately, there is no time now to do that. They've got to get results.
I know that a lot of people are tipping Brighton to go down as well.
Yeah. I have faith.
I
think they've got enough.
It's a likeable club, isn't it? You know,
I think because you have to look at it. All you've got to do is stay above the dotted line, and I think that there's 3 worse teams than Brighton out there, or 3 teams that are in worse positions at least. They've got the joy of having points on the board, and that's sort of all that matters at the end of the day. If you're at the end of 38-game season, you just have to have enough points on the board to avoid the relegation. You need 1 point more, and that's enough. You don't need to run away with anything. So I think that they've got just enough in there to stay up.
So the final verdict.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it's time to have our picks for relegation.
Go on, then, Pat. You can go first.
Yeah.
As our special guest.
All 6 stay up.
Null and void.
If I can have it my way, I'd have a 22 Prem season with 5 relegations next season. But
that's brutal.
perhaps it's fortunate I don't sit on the Premier League board. So my prediction,
Definitely.
I think Norwich will run it close, but I don't think they'll stay up. I reckon Aston Villa for 20th. That's my prediction. And I will go Norwich 19th. And I will also go Watford as the 18th.
Ooh.
So just say it again. So bottom club is
Aston Villa.
Aston
Norwich.
Villa. Yeah.
Also, no great escape this season for Nigel Pearson.
I don't think so.
I'm going to go for Norwich bottom because I think it's just such an uphill struggle. And as I've harped on so many times, points on the board is what matters, and they currently have the least. So I think they're the furthest adrift. I think Bournemouth will be 19th because I think that I just don't feel inspired by them. I don't feel that there's nothing there that gives me a shred of hope that they can push on and get through. And then I think Villa will be 18th. I think they'll push it close. That one extra game, if they can shock Sheffield United tomorrow night and maybe nick a win, it'll give them a chance. But again, they have a hard fixture list, and it could well come down to a showdown with West Ham on the last day to try and stay up.
Yeah, I think for myself, it's tricky when you look at it, isn't it? You just don't know what football's gonna look like this coming week.
I know.
I'm tempted just to go with what the supercomputer says, but I'm not going to, Pat. So don't worry. I think as much as I think as much as I like Norwich and I like Daniel Farke as a manager, I can see them going down. I think they'll run it close though, but I think you'll see that the bottom club and the club that's 18th, I don't think there'll be many points between them at all. I don't. But I think they're a club that's sorted. Even if they do go down, I fancy them to be there or thereabouts next season if they do go down. And I really hope they keep the manager because I think he's a really good manager. 19th, I'm probably going to have to say Aston Villa, purely because that they're lacking that creativity, I think, at the moment. And I know that Jack Grealish can pull things out of the bag, but it's a lot of responsibility to put on one person, isn't it? But again, I hope they stick with Dean Smith. If they do go down, he's got them out of the Championship once. He'll get them out of the Championship again, and I think that they'll have some financial backing. But I think this time, if they do go down, they've got to use it a little bit more wisely than what they did when they went down.
Definitely.
But I think they'd have learnt the lesson, so I can see them being in the Premier League for a good period of time, regardless if they go down next season. I think they're pretty sorted. And 18th place, it's
draw out of a hat.
Anyone's in it, draw out of the hat.
Yeah.
But just purely based on the fixture list, I said I wouldn't go with what the supercomputer says, but I am going to go with what the supercomputer says. I'm going to have to say Bournemouth. Look, it's one of them, and anyone can go down. I just think that they do leak goals, and that's you can't really rely on Callum Wilson, Josh King to get them 2-3 goals a game. And I think just on that basis that they'll go down. I do worry for them though if they do go down. They've got a huge wage bill that they need to sort out. But look, anyone can go down from those 6 clubs, and it's just so hard to pick. But just for you, Pat, just to end on, the supercomputer also predicts that Southampton only have a 1.1% chance of going down, and Newcastle have a 1.5% chance of going down. So, are we discounting them, or do you think that can? No, I think we'll discount them.
Not a chance.
Thank you guys for
Thank you, Pat, for coming on.
Just before we go, stay tuned because we will be producing podcasts on the weekly. If you're Australian and you like football, stay tuned because we've got quite a special podcast coming up. And if you are watching this on the YouTube channel, just comment below who you think's gonna go down. This will be uploaded on the day of the restart.
Yes.
So so stay tuned. That's been Football Unravelled podcast, and thank you for listening. Thank you, boys, for joining us.
Very welcome.
No worries.